Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from wherever you are. Here we are at a new episode of Bicerin. Edward, I think today we're talking about pain. Too hot, then it burns. So we've done a sort of parallelism with the coffee. Can you tell us what happened?
Yeah, so first of all, we were going to do this funny little skit at the beginning. It wasn't going to be funny. It was going to be awful because neither of us can act. And we were going to pretend we drank hot coffee, and then we recorded the episode kind of last week, and it was really good. We talked about some amazing things, didn't we? But then I failed to save the episode, so here we are doing it once again, painfully.
Well, I spoke with some friends of mine who do podcasts and they do videos on YouTube as well, and it's very common.
Yeah.
And I mean, hopefully it'll come even better than it was, because at least on my side, there's been some news. There's been some developments. So we had the idea of the coffee that when you drink is too hot, and just remind us what Bicerin is.
Oh yeah, so we didn't actually do this on the introductory episode, did we? So Bicerin really is the reason we're so coffee orientated is the whole thing is based on this coffee from the north of Italy that has a little shot of kind of chocolate ganache in it, and then it's coffee and frothed milk. So it's a nice sweet coffee, but obviously, like anything, it can be too hot, can't it?
That's right. And so the theme for today is pain. So, what is pain? Why do we get it? And what can we do to liberate from it?
Let's work with these new developments first.
Oh, well, so in my family, I have a grandmother with dementia, and we are quite good in the family that we can look after her. We don't need to put her in a care home. We're quite comfortable enough. And my grandfather was actually, during the past 2-3 months, he's been complaining that he doesn't want to look after her because he wants to live the rest of his life, quite free, isn't it? And what happened afterwards, it made me think about how we live. And after 2 months that he's been complaining, he phones me up, and he said, I went to the hospital and they told me I have stage 3 cancer, pancreatic cancer, stage 3 to stage 4. So they had to have surgery on me. They have to do surgery, but I won't live longer than 8 months. Yeah, and and all of a sudden, all the lessons I did in Buddhism, all the books I've read, they hit me like a train. And it made me think, we suffer so much in life, and we forget to live, don't we?
Yeah, this is true. How did the lessons that you've learned help you to deal with that pain in the moment? How did you, or did they, is the question, I suppose.
Well, in a kind of way, I'm more prepared for my grandmother passing, because she's got dementia. It's been for the past 4 years. Every time she sees me, she thinks I'm the plumber. So I'm kind of, got used to the idea because I thought about it. With grandfather, I kind of thought about it, but I think he's struggling more. He's struggling more because, he was thinking about his life after grandmother. He was projecting his life onto the future.
Yeah.
And yeah. And then it made me think, maybe if we all think about death, not every day, but at least once a week, we think about our own death.
Yeah.
It makes us, it gives a completely different view of life, and it can help us live better, to enjoy the present.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, I think there is a parallel in Buddhism in terms of they constantly talk about how everything changes, nothing stays the same, and I think implied within that everything changes is that everybody will eventually die, and that's kind of part of the cycle of reality. And then lots of spiritual traditions talk about death, though. Some in a more healthy way than others. So you have, your Buddhism with this deep realization that everything changes, nothing stays the same. And then you have kind of your South American traditions of the Day of the Dead. And you said there was something similar in Italy as well, isn't it?
Yes, we have it's called Ognissanti.
Yeah.
Is a sort of Halloween, is a sort of Catholic tradition. It actually mixes up with pagans, and we celebrate the deaths. We go to the cemetery, and I mean, last time I went to the cemetery, reminded myself, as you know it, I used to be a memorial mason, so I used to make memorials for a living, quite expensive ones. It hit me after 4 or 5 months I was doing it that, memorials really are there not for the dead, because the dead are dead, like, they're for they're there for the living,
Yeah.
Members are there for the living. And, it's we place these tombs not for the people who died, but for people that want to remember it. And, is there a problem in that? Maybe, but every excess is wrong. As Buddhism teaches us, we have this person that projects itself into the future, things about the past, and it just never managed to enjoy the present.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, you have a tradition in Christianity. Is it Christian or I mean, if you look at graveyards up and down the country, especially with the older ones with old gravestones, a lot of them have the memento mori on the gravestones, the pictures of skulls and crossbones and angels and things, and it's kind of obviously, like you say, it's not meant for the dead because they can't see it. It's meant for the living, and it's remember that you will die too. So I think the implication is to live your life now. So that seems to be a constant theme as well, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It comes to mind, that when Krishnamurti, in one of his interviews, a young man asked him, "How can I live better? How can I live without any fear? What should I do? I don't want to end up like my parents." And Krishnamurti looked at the young man and he said, "You're young. You're gonna die, and just do what find your talent, and develop it, and don't worry about money, because at the end of the day, you die." And, and if you end up poor, so be it.
Yeah.
At least you followed your talent, and that's the whole meaning behind it. And if you suffer, so be it. It's all about the journey. And I think this is what my grandfather was missing out as well. He's very lavish, he's very comfortable with money, but he never managed to enjoy the present.
Yeah.
You can see he brought it with him until the last days, I'm going to have a conversation with him because, he's been worrying about, looking after grandmother. Now he's not going to outlive her. So,
Yeah.
it's quite enlightening.
I think money is a thing that people suffer unduly about as well in life. I think that's an interesting kind of side note. We have a saying. There's two sayings in Ireland. I'm not sure where they come from, but one is that there's no pockets on a shroud.
Yeah.
And another is that there's no hitch on a hearse. So on the back of the hearse, there's no hitch for your trailer full of money. And I think that again, they're just people just say them. They're just aphorisms, but I think there's deeper meaning there in terms of why worry about what's going to happen if you know that you're going. And I think that would reduce your suffering. I mean, you said Krishnamurti mentioned, if you suffer, so what? But I think you would suffer less if you just always appreciated the fact that you are definitely going to die. So you may as well enjoy what is now, even if it's sometimes not that pleasant, because it's better than nothing.
Yeah, and most of the Buddhist view, but also the Hinduism, but even the spiritual practices of the Sufism and the Catholics as well. They all mentioned that the most of mental afflictions come from not enjoying the present, from not accepting reality.
Yeah.
I mean, let's put, for example, what's happening to my grandfathers, because it's something that happens to all of us. We do experience somebody who dies, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it happens with my father as well when he died. So people go through a phase where they have to accept. They have to accept what happened. So what happens? It could take a month, could take 6 months, it could take a year, could take 2 years, and you start thinking, "Why did this happen? I don't deserve it. He didn't deserve it." And you see this, all of this way of thinking comes up because you're not accepting the reality.
Yeah.
Your mind is projecting onto something that's not real. So your mind is creating mental afflictions that shouldn't be there because you're not in the present.
Yeah.
And therefore, and these sorts of habits. So once you accept what happened, so the person is dead, or that is about to die, or they died, you do say, "I do give you permission to go." This is when you move on. So this happens with death, but it happens with a lot of things in our lives. Like it happens with, I don't have enough money, I want more money. You see, you're not accepting the present.
Yeah.
Well, I want, this person is not making me happy. Why is that? Because you're not living the moment, so you're projecting this person to make you happy.
Yeah.
And we do this constantly. Once you become aware of it, I mean, I've been doing this with Buddhism, but psychotherapists do the same. They analyze this, you see. And once you start seeing this, you can't unsee it. You walk down the street and you see this pattern, this habit behavior damaging us. And, we see this in England, we see this in Europe. It's more present, paradoxically, this is more present in the first world.
Yeah.
And, we were touching in our previous recording that got cancelled before.
Yeah.
We were mentioning how in the new, in Europe, in America, we are addicted to go on holidays, aren't we?
Yeah. 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 Because we think it'll make us happy.
Yeah. And you see young professionals, coming back from holidays. "Oh, I need another holiday." Why? Because when you go on holiday, you got so many inputs that they force you to be present in the present.
Yeah. Yeah. It's automatic forced mindfulness, isn't it? Which is no bad thing. I mean, being mindfully in the present is no bad thing. I mean, so the mindfulness movement, again, it's linked with Buddhism. It's grounded in Zen tradition. But the mindfulness view on suffering and pain is that you practice acknowledging, or practice, first of all, noticing what it is that comes up. You notice everything is the practice. And when something unpleasant comes up, something painful, either physically or psychologically painful comes up, you practice acknowledging that, noticing it, and just letting it go. So it's a double practice there of or triple practice really, of noticing the thing, acknowledging the reality of it, and then noticing that everything changes. So because it arises, it will fall away. But also because you have put a full awareness on it, it is allowed to go away. It's like giving yourself permission to notice the pain and not suffer because of it. It's that difference really between pain and suffering.
Yeah. And the Buddha's view, at least the Buddhas, but also all the, the following philosophers like Ashatis, Nagarjuna, is to, I mean, the Buddha didn't explicitly say this. He did try not to water the seeds that produces suffering. He probably eventually is trying to say, get rid of the seeds completely if you want to achieve nirvanas. But you see, if we manage to do this, I'd say about 99% of our mental affliction would go away.
My view on the seeds metaphor that's used in Buddhism is So the way, just for anybody who isn't aware of it, is that we're all born with these seeds of potential
Yeah.
happiness and sadness within us. So we can choose to water the seeds of happiness or water the seeds of strife, by our actions. Our actions water them. Just to kind of briefly cover it. But my view on that isn't that they'll go away. Those seeds will remain, as seeds do. Seeds remain dormant forever. So even if you are constantly, habitually watering the seeds of contentment, there's always a chance, if you give up the practice or if you slip or whatever, that your seeds of strife will be watered at some point. And I think what's important is you can then go back and water the seeds, because everybody slips up. I think that's important. There's no way. I fully believe that the Buddhist teachings are that it's not really possible to reach nirvana, but we are aiming for it nonetheless. So we have a belief in it, but also we acknowledge that it's not really possible, because even if you did achieve it, by its very nature, if it has arisen, it will fall away. So it's therefore not permanent. So I think that's important about the seeds, that it's a process constantly.
Yeah, and Thich Nhat Hanh, one of the Zen Buddhist, is almost considered an enlightened person.
Mhm.
He does mention that to shield ourselves from suffering, so to achieve nirvana. Okay, let's just say that nirvana is not paradise. When we mean nirvana, it's just a state of mind free from mental afflictions.
Just
So it's
means exhaling, doesn't it? So let's.
so it's a very good mental health, let's say. So
Mhm.
nirvana is to have very good mental health. Is the way to achieve your own good mental health is to do meditation. So bhavana is the Indian, and then bhavana divides into samadhi, which is full concentration meditation, which normally you would see, in kundalinis, the Hinduism, it comes from that. So just focusing on one thing, and that helps your mind to stay under control, and you achieve sensational or states like jhana, zen, and chan, and then you go vipassana, which is the meditation you would achieve through every day. Now with this, you achieve your own, your own happiness. You manage to shield yourself from your own pain. But then what happens once you enter the world? That's the hard part, because then you get people suffering, right? You see it in the streets every day. They're suffering. And their suffering, their anger goes on to you as well. So what Thich Nhat Hanh says is, when a person makes you suffer, it is dropping their suffering on you. So what you should do is you need to help them. And to avoid suffering, you need to make your heart bigger. So if you have a bowl and you drop salt in it, the bowl is salty. But if you don't have a bowl, but you have an ocean, well, ocean is salty, but let's say you have a very big pond of water, you don't get salty.
Yeah.
And in this way, you can actually help them.
Yeah. Okay. So you're kind of dipping into your kind of compassion practice there,
Yes.
where you almost feel compassion for the person who makes you suffer.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I like that, and I think as a practice it's useful. I think practically for people who don't have it as a practice, I mean, when you start having it as a practice, it can be really difficult, because you have a lifetime of grasping and pushing away. You have a lifetime of, when somebody makes you angry, this egoic self gets offended by it, so it reacts automatically. You've no control over that. So yes, I mean, compassion is a wonderful practice, but I think in terms of actionable advice for someone who doesn't meditate, I think it's difficult.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, compassion, the way, especially, I feel like we're having a Dharma talk, by the way.
Yeah, it is a little.
As compassion, the way most Buddhist monks put it is, because, when you have problems, they look like you can't overcome them, isn't it? So with
Yeah.
compassion, you start thinking about the problem and suffering of everyone,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden your problem becomes small.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, and you find a way to go through them
Mm.
in some way or another, and that in some way it's like you're in some sort you're more selfish by practicing compassion to make your problem smaller. But as you
Yeah.
touched upon it, is the ego causes most of our suffering.
Yeah.
It's we talked about it in our introduction episode,
Mm.
and I was talking about it with my brother,
Mm.
and because as our listeners that might know, this is an online recording.
Yeah.
So you might hear things in the background that normally you wouldn't, like my dog scratching himself. Uh, and so my brother was talking to me about his end of 10 years relationship.
Mm.
And he was telling me, I feel my ego is hurt.
Yeah.
I have I want my ego to be pleased.
Mm. Yeah.
And he looked at me and he said, "How come you're so calm these days?"
Mm. Yeah. Bless him. Mm. Yeah.
He said, "I want to find someone that goes well with my ego."
Yeah.
What's
Yeah.
your view on the ego, Edward?
Yeah. That's a huge box to unpack there. I mean, I don't even want to. I think that's another episode. My view on the ego. I mean, so from a kind of just very straightforward point of view, the most important thing for everyone to remember is that we all believe that we are the center of the universe. So we all believe that everything happens to us, but necessarily so because that's the only way we can really perceive the world unless we change that somehow. And if we can somehow develop a practice of just opening our mind to the fact that we're not actually the center of the universe, but we kind of are the universe as it looks at itself more so. So they sound similar, but we're a part of everything rather than something that everything happens to. And I think if you can realize that, and it's like the flicking of a switch, it just happens. It's like there's an exercise which I really like, which really, for me, helped in realizing this. And it's so you're walking down the road and you can either notice the things passing by as if you're still and the world is moving, right? Because you don't actively walk. So you just passively walk, you just let yourself walk. And you notice the world passing by, and you can almost get the sensation that the world is coming past you, like they used to make in the old movies when you were in a car, they would move the pictures past. But then also you can switch that to making it feel like you're moving through a static world. So you can switch it to make it like everything is still and you are acting to move through the world, right? And if you on a walk notice one and then the other, notice one and then the other, and then in the moment, the absolutely tiny moment between the two of them, that's the truth. That actually it's all just happening. You're not walking through the world isn't walking past you. It just is all happening. And it's really annoying because we don't have the language for it. But if you can make yourself see that transition, I think that's what I mean. So that's my view on the ego. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, the ego is this fragment, isn't it? It's this part of us that we think it exists. It comes from not living the present, like you were saying. It comes from projecting basically, it hap- we see animals.
Mm.
It's raining. An animal, if it rains, it goes under a hill, goes under a tree, and it's
Mm.
happy. Human, it's raining. It goes under a tree, is not happy, has to build a house. This is the difference between human and animal.
Yeah.
Man projects onto the future and in the past, but he forgot to live in the present. And I think this is a very important point in Zen. Shurya Suzuki speaks about it. Have a beginner's mind, live in the
Yeah.
present.
Yeah.
So, yes, do please project into the future for practical reason, but do
Mm.
not go beyond that, because going beyond that, you project you project into the future for things that haven't happened yet. And what
Mm.
happens? You resist in the past. So
Yeah.
that you do not feel complete. You think you have a person because of everything that happened to you, your
Yeah.
thoughts, but that's not you.
Yeah.
And this has been one of the biggest misunderstanding in reality, one of the biggest misunderstanding in the world. And, you just look back at the history of humans. We've all studied history in school at some point. What there is on the books, just wars, famine, antagonism, you know,
Yeah.
empires growing and falling. There's never a moment of happiness.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah. Well,
been
nothing. Yeah.
there's been few enlightened bits like
Mm.
maybe Renaissance, but even during Renaissance there was a mess. There's been killings, and the enlightening period. You would say the French Revolution, but everything changed to everything stayed the same, really.
Yeah.
And what else? Like, can we create a world where we just live in the present, and the only thing it doesn't define us is suffering? Because animals are there. Why we can't?
Yeah. I wonder. I wonder if you could call. Yeah. I wonder if you could say that animals suffer. I mean, truly suffer. They obviously feel pain, but if we define suffering as our response to pain, is there an egoic response to pain in animals? That's a question, isn't it?
So this is a fantastic point which I've been pondering about during our
Mm.
deleted recordings. But then I didn't have a chance to say that's good about it. It's coming a much better, more involved conversation. Um, Animals follow their nature, don't they?
Yeah.
They follow their nature, and they cannot do otherwise. And that's the Buddhist view as well. When you have don't kill the animals. You can. Buddhists are allowed to eat meat,
Mm.
but just do not kill animals. Just for impulse suffering, because all they're doing is just their nature. That's all they can do.
A
And
counter argument.
yeah,
What would you say to the fact then that humans are just following their nature?
yes, I think humans, because we have a very developed mind, we
Mm-hmm.
do think that we can do whatever we want.
Mm.
But at the end of the day, we can only do what humans do.
Yeah. But that's what we do. We do what humans do, which is whatever we want, right?
Yes, we do think that we have, decisional powers over everything we do. But in truth, we don't.
Mm.
What differentiates us from animals is that our degree of decision is higher. And that gives us the illusion that we can do whatever we want. But, you can't, at the end of the day, you can only do with what's within the limits of your mind.
Mm.
And since it's a powerful tool, we end up thinking, cogito ergo sum. So I think, therefore I am.
Mm.
The East philosophy view is the opposite. Is I am, therefore I think.
Mm. Mm.
And if you look at a turtle, no, actually, let's use something else. Let's use a bird. A bird is
Mm.
flying. A bird is flying. So a bird is flying. Can the bird walk? Yes, it can. With those things, it can decide. Yes, I'm gonna walk.
Mm.
Can the bird say, "I'm gonna swim now"?
Mm.
It would be weird, wouldn't it? It would be
Mm.
weird. It would be really weird. Same thing for the plant. The plant, you know, it follows its nature by saying, I'm gonna grow in the direction of the sun.
Mm.
Can it decide not to grow in the direction of the sun?
No.
No. Yes. So with humans, because the choices are a lot higher than plants and birds, we have this amazing decisional power, which is anyway within the nature of the humans.
Mm.
And, but then we start mistaking this for, we start mistaking reality. We start imposing things. We start putting labels on everything. We start putting labels on people. He's Italian, he's French, he's German, he's black, he's white. We start giving properties that do not belong to thing. It doesn't belong to reality.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
And yeah,
go on.
we start creating this whole reality that doesn't really exist. That's what Buddhists mean. Not that reality outside of us doesn't exist, but our conception of it is wrong. Like we look at the tree, but we made up the tree. We made up the word tree, but the tree is made of branches, is made of leaves, is made of a lot of things which our brain through our centuries of conditioning perceives that as tree. But in here, inherently, it has no properties.
No, and I obviously that, not obviously, sorry, that's scratch that. I believe in that view of things that there is no inherent essence to reality. I feel like I've kind of accepted that as a fundamental truth, right? My issue is humans. So I think there's two things there. Humans are afraid of death because of our individualistic kind of nature, as opposed to a forest of trees. They're not really afraid of death in the same way, because if one tree dies, then the next tree beside it gets to grow higher. And ultimately, anyway, under the ground, the trees are all helping each other to grow the forest as a whole, almost as a unit. So I think there's that, the fact that humans are individually afraid of death. But also, to us, the only reality that exists is what's in our head. The thing that we create is the entirety of the universe for us. There is, by definition, nothing more for you than what is in your head right now. And then I think where people fall down with this definition, or this idea that nothing has an individual essence or reality isn't real, is that, well, if that isn't real, then everything isn't real. Absolutely everything, with absolutely no caveats, because there is nothing else except what you're experiencing. So going back to the point, humans are just being humans. I'm just going about humaning. No matter what I do, if I human in a way that hurts me and others, I'm humaning. If I learn these deeper truths and become, one day, imagine, enlightened, then I'm still just humaning. I'm still going around humaning. That's just another idea. That's just another invention in my head of reality.
Humans can only do what humans can do, and it cannot be otherwise. That's what it is, and what it cannot be. That's what Parmenides used to say. So it's in the West, we got to the same knowledge as in the East. It's just it got buried. It got buried under amounts of. Most of our suffering comes from this. This is a misunderstanding of reality.
Yeah.
And if you listeners are having trouble understanding what we're saying, is because language has limits.
Yeah.
And there's only so much you can say about experience without using so many words, really. So what happened in the West? What's interesting, I wanted to touch on this, because what happened with Buddha, after Buddha died, there were no writings. He taught to about 600 bhikkhus. That's his followers were about 600. They knew all of his teachings. And there's been a massive reunion after he died, deciding on what to remember. And the answer was everything. Everybody recited by memory everything. And there was a view not to write this down, because if one person writes things down, what happens, only that person's view will be taken as truth.
Yeah.
So it was intentional to keep 600 people keeping the oral tradition.
Yeah.
And that continued for about 200 years, until then King Ashoka decided to write things down. But even then, it was within Buddha's intention to not keep one certainty, because That's what happened with the Christianity. St. Peter started writing things down. A group of people held it, and he stayed within the same group of people, writing
Yeah.
the Bible. And this is the only truth. This is the only truth there is. It's revealed. Do you see a problem there?
Absolutely. Yeah. Because you're writing abstractions down with abstractions, and language is just another one of those created imaginary things.
Yeah.
And then writing is another one of those created imaginary. I mean, it couldn't possibly be, which is where, see, I really have a lot of affinity with the mystics, the Sufis and the Christian mystics, because I think they, to my view, kind of got it right, because they concentrated on experiential religion. Like they wanted to see God, they wanted to meet God, and I think their definition of God was actually just reality. They wanted to experience this fallacy that what you are seeing is true. And I think by experiencing it, it's not that you then see the truth. I think what it is that you see that you're not seeing the truth, and that's all that matters. You realize that all of this, everything I think, everything I say, everything I feel, is all just generated within this corpuscle that I am,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you nailed this. You just nailed it, because everything that's ever been passed through Hinduism, Buddhism, Zen, Tibetan Buddhism, and all variants, is getting rid of the afflictions of the mind and getting to this truth, non-dualism. And we got there in the West. There've been people who managed to get there. We got there through the antiquity. We got there through Christian spiritualists. We got there through Muslim spiritualism. We got there through the Romantic poets. And we're getting through now. Now the West, is becoming. The Dalai Lama said the communities of Buddhism are there's less numbers, in the West, but they practice harder than in the East. And it's in the Dalai Lama views that, probably the next Buddha will come up in the West. And it might come through not as a person, but as a community, Maitreya Buddha, they call it.
Yeah, that's I've come across that.
Yeah. And but yeah, I mean, it's do you see how we developed? We are developing in a way that just causes us suffering. So language puts boundaries. Another type of language that we use is science. So science, got us to reductionism. So everything that we can measure becomes reality. So, and then we have a problem, because then you start thinking up, they say that consciousness comes from your mind. It's just a byproduct. You're just, you have no meaning, the universe came to be, is going to end, and, and your life has no meaning apart from just a group of atoms. Do you see another problem there?
Yeah. I mean, I don't, because if you think then about science as it's going,
Yeah.
they have realized that they can't actually measure everything anyway. Like it's come to the point where everything has got either so small or so big that measurements don't actually exist, because the act of measuring changes what you're measuring. So maybe we don't know everything. Maybe reductionism isn't the ultimate truth. Maybe the fact that, Newtonian physics works at the kind of human level, and atomic physics is needed, and then cosmic physics is needed, and you have different kind of ways of measuring what on the surface would be the same thing. Maybe that's their concession to the fact that actually all of this reductionism, all of this abstraction on abstraction on abstraction doesn't fully put it all together, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it doesn't put it all together, because science is a language. I call it a language because two physicists can speak through a blackboard without even speaking the same language.
Yeah.
So it is a language. And what languages do, they have a fantastic knowledge of the detailed, but they lose
Mhm.
the vision.
Yeah. Yeah.
So by losing the vision, we ended up in a society where we can now send rockets to Mars, but we still struggle to heal, a wisdom tooth.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this applies to everyday's life. It applies in everyday's life, thinking, oh, my life has no meaning. And,
Mm.
you wake up in the morning and all you think about is the bank account, the money in your bank account. You wake up, you think about the pension. Everything is geared towards not making you leave the present. You're thinking about
Yeah.
your pension. You're thinking about your next trip. You're thinking about all kinds of afflictions. And then you think about those afflictions, creating afflictions of afflictions.
Yeah. Thinking about thinking.
That's right. So you go, and that just generates a lot of suffering. And once you realize that, you just look around yourself and you just see suffering everywhere.
Mm.
And I think that's what prompted probably, also like other gurus like Ramana Maharshi, and the greatest philosophers, like even uh, when you see this suffering, it's very easy, and I've done the same when I was young, to fall into nihilism.
Mm.
For like everything is suffering, there's no point in living, get lost, give up. And Schopenhauer kind of got there.
Mm.
Um, Nietzsche almost went there without touching it,
Mm.
but it's very easy to fall into that line of reasoning.
Yeah. On the other side, historically has been an amazing way to bring us closer to God or reality or samadhi or nirvana, or however you want to look at it. You have the Christian mystics really believed in suffering. The monks believed in suffering. The Sufis believed that there's value in suffering. And even in modern day, you have the likes of Michael Easter, who wrote the Comfort Crisis, and his kind of idea is that suffering is important not only just for perspective on the rest of your life, so intentionally giving yourself this momentary suffering kind of gives you that perspective which you spoke about earlier. Thinking about other people's problems as well gives you perspective on your own problem. But also, what I think it does as well give you is it's almost meditative. It brings you closer to the present moment. It makes you mindful, because you can't think about anything else when you're plunging yourself into a pool of 10-degree water, or running 1,000 miles across the Sahara Desert, or sitting under a waterfall, or whatever. When you give yourself these trials, these difficult trials, I think there's real value in it, and it does lessen your suffering for those reasons.
Yeah, it's I remind myself, at least through the training I've been going, and I'm still going through this. Um, every time I suffer, it's a reminder for me to say, it's a sort of alarm for me saying, move on. Happiness is not there.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, this is what Christians used to say. You should be
Mm.
grateful for suffering.
Yeah.
You should be grateful for something for that reason. It just, in Christianity, they tell you have to suffer, you have to be thankful, but they don't tell you how not to suffer again. So, so you see the problem right there. It's just we got stuck there. So I look at suffering and then I move on. I say happiness is not there. Move on. Like, for example, I got tinnitus. A lot of times when it came out, I started thinking, oh, why to me? My life, is already as difficult as it is. Why have I got tinnitus? I was going crazy at night. I couldn't sleep. But then the moment I accepted it, I was like, this is it. I
Mm.
got to live with it. This is it. It's gone. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not on the tinnitus, but it's
Suffering due to the tinnitus is gone. Yeah.
that's right. So we are back at the same, at the same point. Is it the lack of acceptance of reality?
Mm.
And I mean, this happens in relationships. This happens in a workplace. It happens on. To be honest, you look around you, it happens everywhere.
Mm.
And it's I don't know, you're waiting for the airplane and everybody starts complaining, oh my god, there's always delay, I hate this, oh my god, this is horrible.
Yeah.
Like, my brother's like this, he's like, oh my God, the train is not arriving. Oh, I'm hating this journey. You see?
Yeah. Yeah.
And we think this is normal.
Yeah. 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 Very much so. I mean, I think though you can't accept it if you're not aware of it. I think because they think it's normal, it is normal. It is habitual. So you're almost not even noticing anymore that you're suffering. So I think the first step, and this is this human superpower, which I think is uniquely human, is awareness. You need to be aware that you are suffering, aware that you are making up a story about the pain that's happening, and then you can accept it. Then you can just say, okay, this is what it is. And it's funny because it's really hard to do, but as soon as you do it, it's just, oh, that's okay then.
Yeah,
Just kind of
that's
go.
it's funny because the Buddha, gives so many teachings, but in truth, he's really teaching is only this one.
Yeah.
He's giving all of these, lists is just because he has to explain things depending on their level of understanding. So he created
Yeah.
sorts of things.
And that's
Uh,
fine. Yeah.
yeah, and his core teaching is just as simple as this one. And I remember there's a sutra where the bhikkhus ask him, "Oh, okay, so we learn this. How long will it take to arrive to enlightenment?" And he says, "Well, if you learn the 12 links, it's gonna take you 12 years. Um, but if you're in a good state and good condition, it can take you half a month."
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And that's hilarious, isn't it?
Yeah. Brilliant.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, when you look at yourself just as a process,
Mm.
not as an ego, just as a process, as the
Mm.
mind just perceiving things. This is the five aggregates theory. You're just
Mm.
perceiving things, and you're coming up with a result that happened. This
Yeah.
happened like thousands of
Yeah.
times a day. If you just see just your mind doing through this process, you can analyze it. You can
Mm.
become your own therapist.
Mm. Mm. Very
You
much
be-
so.
yeah, you become your own therapist and take the suffering out of you.
Isn't that just what prayer is, though? You pray, you self-hypnotize, things come up, you might talk about them, you might just think about them, but you keep praying, so you keep, putting the mind on that, the thinking mind, the analyzing mind, you put that over there on the prayer, on the, Our Father who art in heaven, whatever. And then in the background, things come up. So it's almost a form of self-hypnosis, but it's the same as meditation, except my problem is, right? I think the Catholic Church has got stuck with this thing that it's all really difficult. You can't tell everyone straight away. You can't. You must keep it secret. Only the priest can know, and then he'll tell you bit by bit, and then eventually you'll kind of get it. Whereas the Buddhist view to me seems kind of like, just tell him everything. Just tell him everything now. Tell him the secret. The first thing they tell you is the secret. You sit and you meditate, and then everything comes up. That's it. That's the whole bloody secret. But the Christian churches, they seem to just have this idea that, well, we mustn't tell everyone everything. We must tell them these stories, and then they have to figure it out for themselves. And then if they come to the priest and discuss it, then the priest might discuss, and explain, and you can listen to the sermon, and they'll enlighten you in one little aspect of it. But it's like you would need a lifetime of going back and going back and going back in order to actually fully realize anything. But Buddhism just seems to be, but this is the secret. There you go. Go and practice that. And that's it.
Yeah, because there's in another sutra. There's so many sutras you can lose your head around it, really.
Yeah.
But in another sutra, Buddha says, "I've given you the Dharma, which is my teachings. Think of them like a raft to get you across the other side of the river.
Mm.
Once you get to the other side of the river, get rid of the raft."
Yeah.
But there are many ways to get to the other side of the river. You can swim
Yeah.
in. You can
Yeah.
build a different raft.
Yeah.
As long as you can get your mind clear of affliction, that method is valid.
Yeah. Yeah. Perfectly.
And like and I think this is exactly what Buddha wanted. We created it. So it streamed into Buddhism streamed into traditional Buddhism. It streamed into Tibet Tantra. It became Zen, jhana, and I think Sufism got influenced by this. By on the Silk Road, they got there. And Zen. So as long as there are ways to rid of your mind of mental afflictions or suffering, it is a valid method.
But the Abrahamic religions seem to be saying, right, there's the river, come onto this cruise ship and we'll cruise up and down the river forever. How about that? That's what we're going to do. We're just going to cruise up and down the river, and then when you die, we'll just throw you on the other side, and then that's how it works. Now, I don't want to make a straw man of anybody's beliefs. I was obviously being a bit silly, but it's frustrating to me that the truth is so simple. Why make it more complicated than it needs to be?
Yeah, and and there is to say to the audience that listen to us, we are from Catholic background.
Yeah.
We're not antagonizing. We are just investigating, really.
Yeah, exactly. And I think humor is a useful tool for metaphor because ultimately that's how I feel. I can't describe it in language any better way. But I like the raft story because you destroy the raft after.
Yeah. And there is the devil's advocate, and someone might be thinking in the audience is, right, okay, you're saying language is problematic, you're saying science is problematic, why do you use it though?
Yeah, what else are we going to use?
You have to make a concession to the mind, you see.
Yeah, you have to.
You have to make a concession to the mind, because otherwise, there was a point Ramana Maharshi was saying. Gosh, I burped because I just drank beer. So, Ramana Maharshi used to say when he was doing his Vipassana retreat and when he was getting these questions about reality, his answer would be silence. Obviously, if you just silence yourself, it's so that the audience has a problem right there. So eventually, he had to break silence because the audience wouldn't understand.
Exactly.
And you're making a concession to the mind by, trying to vaguely. That's what Buddhism says. If this Buddha says as well, language only vaguely point in the direction, but then the rest is experiential.
But the problem is, people are looking at the pointing finger and not what it's pointing at.
Yeah.
which is just for anybody unaware is another Buddhism-ism. I'm trying to find the 4 quartets, because I think that's a good example of another concession you could make. Because I think if you read the poem, the 4 quartets, you would come to the same realizations we're talking about. But in order to fully realize those realizations from reading that poem, you would have to study literature of the time, the from the 17th century. You'd have to study so much religion and literature that you may as well just become a Buddhist. It doesn't take any less time. So some concession has to be made. You learn a language, you use language, or you use metaphor, or you mix them up a bit, or you learn literature or poetry. But it's all, and I said this to someone recently, that it's all the same thing, and they actually called me up on it, because saying it's all the same thing kind of flattens it. Because it makes it cheap. It's not all the same thing. It is all pointing at the same direction, the same destination, but there are many different roads to get there. Like the Buddha said, there's many different ways to cross the river. It depends on where you're starting from. To really simplify it, London is in the geographical position that it's in. But I can't tell you how to get to London because I don't know where you are. And if I do know where you are, the way to get to London will be different than the way to get to London from where I am.
That's right.
It's very much the thing. The destination is the same, but the road is entirely different. It might be longer, shorter, harder, easier. It might involve a plane or a boat, but ultimately we're all on the same side. And that's another episode as well.
That's right, and the what I've noticed is that, and also, I've noticed it, and then Geshe Namdak, my teacher at the Buddhist Jamyang Center in London. What we've noticed and what seems common to all of us that follow non-dualism is we come from a great place of suffering. You do start investigating why you're suffering when you come from a big place of suffering. You probably might have lost a relative. You might come from depression. You might come from a big accident. You might come from a war. And when I go to Dharma teachings, lessons, these are the people I see around me.
Yeah.
I see veterans. I see people who come from depression. People who come from divorces. People who come from very difficult situations. And it's interesting how people start investigating their own suffering when they come from a place of very big suffering. And it's Jung used to say this, and also many psychotherapists today, is depression is the last step before acceptance of reality. The last step is the last step before acceptance of reality. It's the last step. and it's because in today's world, we are not after happiness. We are after pleasures. We're after pleasures that please our ego that doesn't exist. So we are after a car, a holiday. We are after the money in the bank account. And while it creates moments of pleasures, it creates troughs. And it's rinse and repeat. And the accumulation of this rinsing and repeating does create forms of afflictions, in which also depression becomes part of it. And if someone sees their life in there, we're all in. So, what do you think, Ed?
Yeah, I think we're not going to solve it today, but I think there's some really useful kind of little bit. I mean, this is a very different. I must say, has been a very different episode to the one we recorded.
Yeah,
but I think there's value in it too. And I don't know. I don't want to put a value judgment on it to say it's better or worse, but I think it's probably a little deeper. But I think the key kind of take homes are that reality isn't what you think it is, because you're thinking it is that, and that your suffering comes from your response to the stimulant that's causing it. I think that would be a fair kind of a summation, wouldn't it, really?
100%. And let's do something that we've never done in the previous episode. Should we give some books? Shall we give some book reads? Should we do a summary of the book reads that you would recommend on this?
Some recommendations for books, my goodness. Lots and lots. For this particular topic, I mean, I would always recommend The Miracle of Mindfulness by Thich Nhat Hanh.
Yeah.
Because it's such a lovely introduction to this kind of idea, and it's short and it's easy, and it's a lovely introduction.
And I will probably give Rupert Spira, You Are the Happiness That You Seek. And don't buy other books from him because they talk about the same thing. So
it's all the same.
It's all the
same. Yeah. No, I think that.
Yeah. Well, I think we came to a nice circle, as we always do.
Yeah.
It did turn out to be a completely different episode, and I think even better than the original.
Yeah.
And it leaves us open for more. Ed, is there anything else you would like to add?
No, I think that's I think we've come full circle. So I'll leave it at that. We don't want to start a new one, and we can discuss something else. I mean, what would be interesting is if people put in the comments what they would like us to discuss next. But maybe we'll come up with something ourselves. Who knows?
Absolutely. Brilliant. Thank you very much for connecting. You have a good day or good evening or good afternoon wherever you are. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.